have 4 million people crossing borders. It's not that organized. It's absolute pandemonium.
It is catastrophic. There is no other way to describe it.
But who cares about Afghanistan and Ukraine when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock in the Oscars? That's bigger news.
From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, the Zoomer with Marissa Lennox.
Welcome to the Zoomer. I'm Marissa Lennox. It is civilians with increasing numbers of women and children who far too often bear the brunt of war. Look no further than the horrific images of civilian corpses in Ukraine, some with their hands tied behind their backs, or the attack on the maternity hospital, which left young children and women in labor buried beneath rubble. The road to safety is particularly dangerous for women traveling alone with their children, while men stay behind to fight. Women are at a heightened risk for abuse, exploitation, and violence, and also bear the burden of rebuilding their lives in a new country. On today's show, we'll discuss the plight of refugees, particularly women and children from Afghanistan to Ukraine. But before we dive in, let's tape the topic.
The war in Ukraine has forced over 4 million to flee as refugees abroad. More than half of them are children. Another 6.5 million are thought to be displaced inside the country, and over 12 million stranded in areas affected by the fighting. Most have crossed into neighboring countries to the west, such as Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Hungary, and Moldova. But others have continued their journey to other European countries and beyond, including Canada. Since January, between 7,000 and 10,000 Ukrainian nationals have arrived in Canada. But as Putin's war rages on, that number is expected to skyrocket.
The war has led to massive displacement and refugee flows, conditions that increase vulnerabilities as well as opportunities to exploit people in need. And it is a stark reminder that in war, civilians bear the brunt and human rights are violated. Majid, I'll start with you because to read it in the news is very different than to be on the ground and seeing it with your own eyes. Are you ever shocked by these atrocities?
Of course, we are all shocked by this, but we have a news that this will happen maybe 6 months ago. This has been in the news that the war and the Russians was planning to attack the Ukrainians. The question here is, why the NATO did not take the necessary steps in order to weaponize or to protect the Ukrainians and to be able to stand up for the Ukrainians instead of them fighting for themselves? Why this weapon did not arrive 6 months ago, a year ago, in order to ensure that Ukraine will be able to survive?
Vladislav, you were in Ukraine with Majid. What did you see?
There's one thing to see something on TV and another one to see with your own eyes, both in Poland, in the shelters, at train stations, on a border where people are crossing. You see mostly single women with children. Men have to stay behind. Lviv, we crossed the border. We were in a military hospital to see the young boys. I call them boys because they are not much older than my oldest grandson. Terribly wounded, amputated leg, amputated arm. It's something that I never thought I'm gonna see in my life. You know what, I'm a man and I don't cry easily, but sometimes it's hard to keep your tears.
How big of an issue is mental health? I mean, you heard it from Majid and from Vladislav, the atrocities these people are seeing.
One of the clients we recently helped were a couple who left Odessa. They made their way to a border to safety, and they left behind the 92-year-old mother that couldn't do the walk with them. And so while they're here right now and they're trying to figure out how to address medical issues, housing issues, mental health issues, they left behind a parent. And the likelihood is they will never see the parent again, and the likelihood is they will never be able to go home again.
We know that in war and in any conflict, Marie, women and children often will bear the brunt. Can you talk to me about some of the unique vulnerabilities they're facing right now?
Well, sure. I mean, women and children often bear the brunt. They bore the brunt even in COVID, and particularly when you're dealing with marginalized women, impoverished women. They are subject to a great deal of difficulty. They are leaving in Ukraine. Their families often without documents. They are entering Poland or neighboring countries without a way to get a job. They are easy prey for anybody who wants to take advantage. I have heard, I know of mothers delivering their children to the border and then going back and just finding a caregiver for their children. So you can imagine as a mother handing your child over in the hopes that they'll be taken care of. And I have to say, from a legal perspective, because that's the perspective I understand, it is catastrophic and a pandemonium on the ground. It is impossible to access embassies. The waits are not only days, weeks. You cannot even make a call and find a live person in the Canadian embassy. Immigration lawyers here in Canada who are actively working, trying to resettle, trying to move people, are being frustrated and cannot do it. The mechanisms and the resources that are necessary to process all of these people, even if you have family here and you just want to come to safety, are completely inaccessible. It is catastrophic. There is no other way to describe it.
Another horrific reality is that of human trafficking. And we are hearing reports of it on the ground, but how real is that? And how does that transaction even take place?
Well, I mean, there's been a sex trafficking and human trafficking problem in Ukraine. It's the poorest country in Europe, so that's even before this situation. But you can imagine, as everyone here discussed, when you have 4 million people crossing borders, it's not that organized. It's absolute pandemonium, as you said. And traffickers know to prey on that kind of vulnerability. And the interesting thing is that it's often women, it's not only men who traffic, and they befriend. If you're desperate, and particularly children who are completely vulnerable and often trusting. But even if you're a young woman with a child and someone says, come, I'll take you and I'll feed you and you don't know what's happening. You've just crossed a border, you've left in a flurry. And so they prey on that trust. And some people are trustworthy, but many aren't. And that's how traffickers kind of get in. They start, they don't kidnap them. They lure them with meals and food and shelter, and then they have control. And when you have that many people moving across a border at one time, there's no way to do it in an orderly fashion. So these women and children are extremely vulnerable.
I would like just to add one element on that. So human trafficking in Ukraine, according to the UN, even in the last 30 years, is more than 260,000 cases been documented. And that's only the cases that have been documented. So human trafficking was something that exists in Ukraine way before that. But when we're talking about women and children and the suffer that they are facing in war situation like this, human trafficking is just one element. But another element that now rape become a weapon of war. And we saw this happening to the Yazidis. We saw this happening to in Afghanistan, to the girls in Afghanistan. We have video and footage of 14 years old was forced by Taliban soldiers to get married to one of them. And we saw this in Ukraine by Russian soldiers that killed and raped as young Ukrainian girls as young as 10 years old.
I think about what I'm hearing and about the people that we're helping right now, both in Canada and that are coming to Canada. And we do a lot of work with the Yazidi community. And it's a community where you very often have a woman raising on her own children that may or may not be her children. It could be a niece, a nephew, or it could even be a child that she had with a captor, and there is mental trauma that goes through every day that these individuals go through when you're raising someone and you don't know whether or not that sibling might still be alive. And we know with our clients, we had a case where there was a sister still being held captive that the family was going to get raise funds to get her ransomed, to get her to come to Canada. Now that was a 16-year-old girl who was held captive since she was 10 years old. I can't comprehend it. If you have nieces or family members or neighbors that are 10 years old and you watch the children playing outside your house, and then you think about the fact that a child that age in a war-torn area is going through this, it makes you rethink the things you worry about at night.
Well said. All right, hold those thoughts. When we come back, we'll pick up this on the other side. Don't go away. Canada is known to be welcoming to refugees from Syria and Afghanistan more recently, but Canada's response to Ukrainians fleeing Putin's war has been a little different. Our government created a special visa visitor program, which does stop short of providing the same kinds of benefits one would receive as a refugee claimant. Majid, can you explain to me how this program works? And I do know that some provinces have stepped in to offer benefits, most recently Ontario, but talk to me a little bit about this program.
It's actually only Ontario that stepped out, and I don't see any another province that did anything more. Well, I'm not an expert on immigration issues. I know it's a visa, that basically special program for 3 years visa to come here.
What do you think about the program?
I think it's a trap. I think that they will bring them here for 3 years, and after the 3 years, they tell them you cannot stay here any longer. The war is over. Go back again to your country.
Because as a refugee, you can come indefinitely.
Yes, but I think the problem as well with the visa program that the government does not present any support or any help upon their arrival. So when they come here with the housing, how they will live, how they will find job, how they will learn the language, mental health, and so on and so forth. Ontario today just announced that they will provide some of this support and help. But this should come from the federal government, not just from a province. Now, the question here is, if they don't have a housing and they don't have a proper arrangement, how I know that the people that when they arrive here, the people that will take them will be a genuine people, they will not take advantage of them.
You think that risk is here too?
Absolutely.
Elise, I mean, the government announced this program just recently, and together with this program is housing, emergency financial assistance. OHIP is a big one. Will it fill the gap?
No. So the government made a decision on this program early in the war. I think they wanted to do some form of a response. And so they opened up the border, saying all you need is a biometric test. It's okay if you don't have a passport. Once you go and you apply, and they started that program on March the 17th, you'll be able to come here. And at first it was 2 years, and then they expanded it to 3 years. And I think what they imagined is that people had family here. Most people we know in wartime want to stay nearby. They want to be able to go back home. And I think people envisioned and maybe hoped that the war would end quickly. And nobody imagined the 4 million people. I mean, the numbers are astronomical about people who have left Ukraine. Nobody imagined the volume of people and how the country would be destroyed. And so the program was designed for a very different scenario. Come here for a while, connect with family, and you'll go back, you'll work, and you'll go back home. That situation has changed. Our assumptions were incorrect. And so there are other provinces, BC, Alberta, Quebec, and Nova Scotia are also offering supports, but they're not connected. And as you mentioned before, there are huge risks when people arrive.
What wrong assumption? My question here is, when we're talking about wrong assumption about the war been only 40 days. It's not like what they didn't understand from the beginning of the war. The government, our Canadian government, have to make announcements and not to follow up on it. When we're talking about 40,000 refugees Afghanistan that they offer, will bring 40,000 refugees from Afghanistan, they only brought 7,000. Stop talking big and do too little. Trudeau's government, they do what is popular, but not what's correct. And that's our problem with our government, in my humble opinion anyway.
Well, I would like to point something out. I'll be biased because I'm originally from Poland. And I want to mention what Polish government did, and we had a chance to discuss this in Warsaw. In the less than first 2 weeks, Polish government, despite the big political divide in the parliament, were able to pass the legislation to give those coming Ukrainians the same privileges as the Polish citizens have, including healthcare, plus what Polish citizens don't have, free travel. They don't have to pay for tickets for public transportation. And now when our Canadian government creates a program for, we mentioned this before, these are mostly women with children. How do they expect them, for example, to get here? They have no money. How do they expect a woman with a child or 2 or 3 children to come here, find work in 3 months and be independent? This makes no sense. There should be a few things here that the government should at least consider. Some of these people, if they want to stay in Poland, if it's possible, Poland should get the financial assistance. But those people that are able to come here, they have relatives or they have some connections, help them out. Help them out financially. Bring them in here. Transportation is important. It's very expensive to get here. Those people have no money. Going back home, many of them, I'm sure they want to go back home, but many of them will have no home to go back to.
Was this a misstep? Should the government have been thinking bigger? Ukraine is a country of 45 million people. To offer a visa program, work program for people to come over here, primarily women and children, I mean, should they have done more? Could they have done more?
Well, I mean, I think you're seeing all of the countries attempting to do something. I mean, what we did is sort of analogous to, I think, a little bit of what France did and what UK did and what Germany did. And it's not enough, obviously. We don't have to be clairvoyant. We just have to turn on the TV to know that it is not enough. So, for example, when you have a 3-year visa program, you have to have documents and you have to get a biometric to get through. If you can't get into an embassy, if you have no access, it's useless. If we go back to Afghanistan and to the Yazidi women and the Syrian refugees, the government commitment was a large number. And at the end, it was very few. And I think Majid knows how many Yazidis ultimately came. I think we were at 2,500 or 3,000.
900 families, so yeah. Yeah. Mm.
A very, very small amount. So you can institute any program you want, but you then have to resource it. You have to staff up the embassies. You have to put people on phones. You have to facilitate the movement of bodies. I think what is stunning and probably frustrating, and I understand it, governments move slowly, but I think what's frustrating to everybody observing is the slow pace at a time where you cannot afford it, because that pace, every single moment that you wait, a person dies, a person cannot leave, a person cannot find food or shelter. We do not have time. It's time for emergency measures because the world is in a crisis. And so you can't do the same old thing that you always did.
All right, hold that thought because we'll pick this up on the other side of the break. Don't go away. Before the break, we spoke about vulnerabilities in conflict, particularly for women, children, and the elderly. And even though the world's attention is on Ukraine, suffering endures elsewhere, including Afghanistan. Majid, it was just 7 months ago when the world watched in horror as desperate Afghans clung to the side of a moving U.S. military plane. On a deeper level, because again, you are there and have been there on the ground. On a deeper level, what is happening to these people today?
Today, Taliban is taking over. Civil liberties is gone. Minority rights is gone. Women rights is gone. I just need to say something about Afghanistan, though. And I understand that we are in a program show right now. One of the main issues and one of the problems of Afghanistan, how much Afghanistan disappeared from our media today. With my all due respect. And I'm very thankful to Zoomer Media, and I'm very thankful to everybody here and to Marie that started this whole thing. But the reality here is that Afghanistan today is not discussed anywhere. Nobody cares about Afghanistan. And very soon, nobody will care about Ukraine. I promise you that in a month or two. But who cares about Afghanistan and Ukraine when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock in the Oscars? That's bigger news. But the reality here is that we're talking about 25,000 refugees just on the Pakistani-Afghani border. We're talking about girls being kidnapped every day. We're talking about what the UN called it the worst humanitarian situation of our century. People cannot find food to eat. And I agree that we cannot deal with Taliban as a terrorist organization or a terrorist government, but the people is paying the price. It's not the Taliban leadership.
How many people have you helped out of Afghanistan?
More than 130 family.
It's hard to imagine, Marie, because 2 decades of progress was reversed overnight, like that. Women can't work. They're not able to attend school, to learn, read. I don't need to tell you this. Mm-hmm. How long does that last for? Because for these women, they understand empowerment. Is this long-lasting? Is this as long as the Taliban's in power? Or is, what can be done here?
It is long-lasting as long as the Taliban is in power. It's long-lasting. I mean, it's in Saudi Arabia. It's in many parts of the Middle East. Women are commoditized, and they're not only commoditized in those countries, but they're commoditized on the international stage. There was no question that one of the biggest victims, if not the biggest victim in Afghanistan, was going to be women and young girls who cannot literally pick up a book and read it without risking their lives. So we knew that. That was not new. That was not a surprise to anybody, but it was a price that the international world was prepared to pay. There were no sanctions imposed. There are never any sanctions imposed on any country for their treatment of women, ever, by the United States. Some of our biggest trading partners, for example, is Saudi Arabia. And so this is a very, very significant concern. In addition to the work that Majid does, I know War Child, for example, is there and on the ground. It is very, very difficult to provide safe harbor for those young girls, to provide them with any education, to get money to Afghanistan, to get food and the necessary things that they need. And we are in a massive crisis. And I have to echo what is being said, which is it's not being written about anymore, which is really, really heartbreaking. They are forgotten girls.
I just want to say, you see that all the time. I mean, it's Eritrea, it's Syria. Oh, we were hearing nothing about Syria either. It's not gone away. I mean, it's not like it manifests in a different way. So I just think as a society in the West that has resources, we have to think of other ways. So I tried to contact some of it's one by one, like you say. You brought 130 families in. Well, there's millions of people who need help. But if the government can't move fast enough, then some individuals can. That's what happened with a lot of the Syrian refugees too. It was a lot of private people that sponsored them, because at the same time, the government's trying to figure out, I say the government, I just mean the powers that be. They're just trying to figure it out too. I'm not defending it, I'm just saying you want biometrics. You can't just randomly go, okay, who's first in line and bring them in. So we need a system, and it's very difficult to get money right now to Ukraine. There's not, people were talking about renting Airbnbs to pass money, but you have to be able to you have to somehow get those funds, and that's impossible too. So I think it's something that we should continue discussing as a resourced country.
It goes back to the timing and the sense of urgency. We have over 100 applications that we want to put in to privately sponsor Afghan women, mostly kids from a school that are not being religiously persecuted, but also because of just by the mere nature that they were born as women. And we have the applications ready to go into the system. And we've been informed that we will find out in the spring when we will be able to upload these applications. We have the money in place. We have the applications complete. And we don't know when the new portal opens up if we're going to have extra admin work, because most of the time we know that when there's a new portal, there's going to be more work. And what no one's talking about is even if we get these young women or these families to places of safety, where they're at right now is not that safe. We're hearing horror stories in the refugee areas where these young girls are being kept because they just don't have the support.
I do want to understand what happens in a rescue mission, Majid, because to Elise's point, you may take them across the border into a neighboring region, which may be safer, but still not particularly safe. So tell me what's involved in that.
I will not be able to discuss all process just for security reasons. But the bottom line here is that we found the survivors. I don't like to call them victims. I just call them survivors. We found the survivors, they and their families, and after that we hire smugglers, underground smugglers, basically to take them from wherever they are through the checkpoints, and we cross the border with them to Pakistan or to Iran.
In some cases, these people are currently being held by the Taliban, is that right?
Some of them is held by Taliban, some of them will be about to be held by Taliban. So,
is there a ransom exchanged, or you can't talk about that?
Legally I cannot talk about that, but yes.
All right, hold your thoughts. Quick break, we'll be right back. The government of Canada made a commitment to bring 40,000 Afghan refugees to Canada, but as of early March had only resettled just shy of 10,000. Here's a clip of Immigration Minister Sean Fraser speaking with my colleague Libby Znaimer about their progress.
And one of the unique challenges that I don't think a lot of people appreciate that's specific to Afghanistan is the fact that we haven't made a commitment to any 40,000 Afghan refugees. Had we been that broad in our commitment, we probably could have pulled people into our humanitarian program who are already in a third country. But we made a commitment to specific individuals, whether it's the family members of these interpreters or those who made a significant and enduring contribution to Canada. And many of those people are still in Afghanistan or in a country where they're having difficulty leaving.
Elise, I didn't realize that it was limited, that it wasn't a broad commitment to bring in 40,000 refugees. But having said that, we are now seeing hunger strikes, people upset with the government's handling of this, with the slow pace of it. Your reaction?
So the Canadian government had 5 priority areas of groups of people that they're helping. And that includes women judges, that includes people that were in media, journalists, people, lawyers, you know, anybody that would be targeted specifically, and people that help the Canadian government. But there's a big backlog. I mean, you have to understand when the Afghan crisis started, the Canadian government was something like 1.6 million applications behind at IRCC in terms of, you know, reviewing people that were coming to Canada for work permit, refugees, et cetera. And one of the tragedies is that while the Afghan file has kind of jumped ahead of others, it's not moving at the speed it needs to. But other refugees that we know from Eritrea and other places, they're sitting and waiting. And for many of them, actually, their papers have to be redone, we think, because they've, you know, the timing is such that the costing of bringing them in is changing. The government's making a lot of changes. So if we have a synagogue that recently supported an Eritrean family, and they raised something like $40,000 in 2019 to bring them over, and that got delayed. The government is now saying those rates were great for 2019, but now you have to use rates of 2022. And now we're going to the community and saying you have to raise more money because that 16-year-old child is now considered to be an adult and you need more funding for them. And so it's complicated, it's complex, and it's slow.
Slow. You know, we were able to do it with Syrian refugees. We brought in 25,000 in a period of a few months. So, you know, what do you make of the delay?
It was the beginning of Trudeau's basically, as a prime minister, he wanted to show everybody that he can do it quickly. He used all his machines. But also, I think when we counted on the UN to pick and choose for us, it wasn't just the Canadian government. And the problem here is that the majority of the Syrian refugees that came here to Canada, they was not, a lot of them was not from the minorities. Actually, the majority of them was only from one faith, which is left behind Christians, Shias, women and children, LGBT community, left behind a lot of people. So the problem here is when we are just want to prove a point, but not to do the right thing.
You know, I think it is very difficult, and we're not going to solve this problem around the table. But you know what we could do? We could process 100 applications of orphans that are ready to go. We can process applications of Yazidis who are ready to go. So, you know, I don't think we necessarily can solve all the big problems, but we can become efficient. We can move quickly. We can resource it. You can hire more people. You can open a portal so that, you know, agencies can submit the applications to bring people over. I think the bureaucracy, which plagues all governments, is feasible on some level, but not when the cost of a bureaucracy is human life. And so when you are dealing with a crisis, you must respond with a crisis response. And that means you move, you resource. And so there are things we can do, every single government can do, to make it more efficient. So, you know, as I said, we're not going to get millions, but my gosh, I don't understand when you hear 100 applications ready to go and we don't know which portal to upload it.
And they managed to do CERB, right? They managed to get CERB out very, very quickly. So they can, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just mean, I have to say I agree with that you can't do millions, but you can do 100, and then you can do another 100, and you can speed up the system.
I think it boils down to what is the questions that we're asking? Are we asking the right questions? So the question is, are we creating a barrier? Are we doing something that can put someone in an unsafe position? So if we go in with the right questions and we say, look, the 1.8 million are all the applications for work permits, for every way of coming through, but we have to say there are different paths, and anybody that right now is at risk, how do we expedite it without at the same time doing anything detrimental to Canadian society?
But we need to also to remember something very important. I used to be a refugee myself. Listen, it's not only bringing them here. We can also bring them in their land and improve their situation, that they don't need to be a refugee. I promise you that none of us wanted to come here. It's very cold. But the thing here is, we are very proud Canadians today, and we want to contribute to the Canadian society. But we love our countries, our roots. And if there was an international support, for example, with the Yazidis, if there was a peacekeeper missions or an international, I will not say troops, I would say international, like the EU or the UN, they can protect their areas, can have a peacekeeper mission there to protect, so they can worship, they can go to work, they can come to work without fear of another genocide. They will not need to come here. We keep looking at the issue just of how to bring them here. What about helping them on the ground so they can survive in their own land?
Well, it's an important discussion, and there's just not enough time. So when we come back, we'll get to some of your comments and questions. That's next. All right, let's get to our audience now for some of their questions and comments. Welcome to the roundtable, Jamie.
Thanks, Marissa. I think one of the themes I've heard is the repetition of it disproportionately affecting women, minorities, both religious and LGBTQ. Why is that?
Well, because most suffering is visited upon those that are marginalized and least equipped to deal with it. So if you don't have resources, if you're isolated, if you're abused, or you don't have any rights, then you will disproportionately bear wartime, you will disproportionately bear illness, you will disproportionately bear COVID, you will disproportionately bear recessions. That is just the way the world works. It's always visited on those who can least deal with it.
There is also a religious element, but we also see women fighting back. And that's, like, we cannot just focus on the negative, we also have to focus on the positive. In Afghanistan, we see women rising, and they are going in demonstration, and they know that they will be punished for that, but they're still fighting back. I believe that with all the elements, society, cultures, and in many Muslim countries is also the religion. And actually, it's actually almost in every religion put women down. We see that women rising, and we have to support them, because in the end of the day, they are our mothers, sisters, wife, daughters. They are the foundation of our society. There is no man without a woman.
You know, when I did, when I filmed in Ukraine before, not just now, and there were so many women who had either husbands who had left them, or it's the poorest country in Europe, so they were themselves, there was alcoholism, they were themselves falling apart. And the women had to keep it together because they had to keep it together for their kids. And they had to be the strong ones, and that's why they were vulnerable to traffickers, because they had to find a way to earn money, and there was nothing, zero for them. So partially, they are very strong, but in a way, that's what makes them vulnerable. They're the ones who are going out there and engaging in the world to try and find a way to make money. And look at Afghanistan. I mean, even the last time there was an issue, it was the women who were teaching the kids underground, quietly, and trying to continue an education for their young daughters so that they would grow up with something. I mean, it's not perfect, but
Absolutely.
We're strong.
I was raised by a very strong mother.
All right, what's your name?
Nelia.
Welcome to the roundtable. What's your question?
Canada continues to engage in trade with countries like Saudi Arabia and India, where sexual slavery and trafficking is widespread. Why is that?
Why is that? Because economics are more valuable than the rights of women in these countries. That's clearly what's been traded in in this deal, and it gives you a sense of the position and the value that's placed on women's rights in those countries. When countries frequently are outraged over human rights abuses, they seem to be silenced when they're significant trading partners.
It's not easy, probably, to cut everything off, with the turn of the switch, but certain decisions have to be made. And as I said before, I strongly believe that Western governments, democratic governments, should get together in order to create a system where more people are protected from atrocities like what we are seeing today.
Well, I think the mighty dollar, as Mary said earlier, is much more louder and stronger than human rights record. Forget about Saudi Arabia and all of this countries, quite honestly. Sorry, I don't know if I can say this in a national TV. But look even at China today. There is persecution happening to the Uyghurs, Falun Gongs, Tibetans, and we're still kissing their behinds every single day. What human right are we talking about? China become our moral dilemma. We don't know what to do with it. When we cannot cut them off because we depend on them, but at the same time, their human rights record is going from bad to worse. The reality here is that we will remain quiet and we will remain compromising, but history teaches us one important thing. We cannot coexist with evil. Even when we are silent today about Russia, it will come back and will hunt us. If we are silent about the human rights in Saudi Arabia, it will come and hunt us. I promise you, we will not be able to coexist with evil. At some point, we'll find it in our footstep. And what's more important is our dignity and our freedom. Then I prefer to sleep hungry than to be slave to a Chinese government.
All right, stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before we go, I have a couple questions for Majed. This is a One Free World international event. And so tell us a little bit about what you're doing, what you're hoping to raise, and for what.
We are leaving again in April 20, and basically the plan that will go first to Ukraine and after that to Afghanistan, and after that returning back again, God willing, in one piece back again to Canada.
Same trip, Ukraine to Afghanistan.
Same trip. Basically what we are hoping to accomplish that before mid-April that we'll be able to raise $300,000 American dollars. And why we want to do that? In order to bring humanitarian aid to both Afghanistan, Ukraine, medical supplies. Medical supplies is very needed right now, but also educational tools like laptop and iPads to orphan in Ukraine, 500 disabled children. So it's extremely important for their survivor. But this is alone one thing, but also bringing some of the families. So One Free World International with the city, Rose City kids, basically we are trying to bring families here in an order, especially children, and especially women with single moms with children, to bring them here to take care of them. So it's very important.
Will you be paying for their flights to come over?
Yeah, absolutely.
And where will they go when they come here?
We are partnering with this amazing organization. They are in Niagara Falls, and we will be able to basically resettle them there. We already have the people, we know who they are, and we settle them one by one.
You mentioned some of them are orphans.
That's correct.
How old are these kids?
They have from 2 years old to 15.
For people looking to support you, where can they go to donate?
www.onefreeworldinternational.org or ofwi.org.
All right, with that, let's get a quick final thoughts from each of you, starting with you, Marie.
Well, my only thought is to donate to One Free World to try to at least help in a concrete way and do whatever we can to bring people through.
I would say the same thing. I mean, we live in a society where people have storage rooms for extra furniture from IKEA that they're renting space for God knows how long. So we have resources. I mean, not everybody here has resources, and that's the only thing we can do. As like individual people, counting on organizations like JICE and like your organization, and I just think we should be generous because that's the only way an individual can help.
You know what, when you are on the ground, you can be overwhelmed with the huge amount that's needed, with what is needed. But Every little contribution helps, and that's the appeal to everybody. Help if you can.
I have two thoughts. The first is that we shouldn't have to wait for photos of people climbing onto planes, or for Alan Kurdi to be washed up on a shore, or for refugees standing waiting outside borders to be let in, to be able to respond. Because Canadians know how to rally. We know how to mobilize, and we know how to stand up, so we can do it. And then the other thing I just want to mention is we focused a lot on women, elderly, children, but the Ukraine crisis is also going to create a wave of individuals in Russia, in Belarus, whose lives are at risk just for speaking up against the government. And we know that they're being risked of being in prison for 15 years. And I can tell you, the email I responded to before we went live was for a Russian family that came here that had to leave because of their Ukrainian ties. And they need help too, and we need to think about the pathways to make sure that those people's lives are not at risk as well.
I came to this country as a refugee. When I arrived here 20 years ago, I had $100 in my pocket. Now I have 50, so it's good news. I know what the refugees go through. I know the hell that they go through. And I know how much I was raised by a single mom that I saw everybody try to take advantage of her every day, but she stood her ground. Yes, Yazidis is persecuted right now, but they are fighting back. Women is persecuted right now in Afghanistan by that, but they are demonstrating. Never underestimate the power of a man or a woman that's standing for the right. I promise you, we can always kill the dreamer, but no one can kill the dream. Remember, if there is one thing you need to remember, we will survive, we will fight back, but we cannot do it alone. They cannot do it alone. We have to stand together in unity. We have to fight for each other. A society will stop fighting for each other at that society. And we have all together be united to fight and to prevail. Thank you.
All right, that's it for time. A big thank you to my panel for being here, for your expertise. We'll see you soon. For now, it's time to zoom out.